During the 1982 Falklands War, one of Britain's greatest concerns was not the Argentine forces already occupying the islands, but the threat operating from the South American mainland. The Argentine Air Force had begun using French-built Super Étendard strike aircraft, armed with the AM-39 Exocet anti-ship missile, and on the 4th of May 1982, one of these missiles struck HMS Sheffield, resulting in the loss of 20 men and sinking the destroyer several days later. Later in the conflict, another Exocet destroyed the merchant vessel Atlantic Conveyor, taking vital helicopters and supplies with it, and tragically 12 sailors. Britain knew that only a handful of Exocet missiles remained in Argentine service, but even one successful attack could have serious consequences for the Naval Task Force. Intelligence suggested that the aircraft and missiles were operating from Rio Grande Air Base in southern Argentina. To eliminate this threat, British planners began considering one of the most ambitious and controversial Special Forces missions ever proposed. This became known as Operation Mikado. The aim of the operation was straightforward in its goal, far less so in any possible execution. A squadron of SAS troops would assault Rio Grande Air Base in Tierra del Fuego. Their primary objectives would be to destroy the Super Étendard aircraft, any remaining Exocet missiles, and supporting facilities. If possible, Argentine pilots and technicians involved with Exocet operations would also be captured or killed. The operation would take place deep inside Argentine mainland, over 400 miles from Falkland Islands, and well outside the declared war zone. It's worth remembering that failure would not only result in the loss of an entire SAS squadron, but significant political repercussions given the vocal fallout surrounding the sinking of the Belgrano and the supposed grey area that had fallen into. Responsibility for planning fell largely to the SAS, working alongside the Royal Navy and the RAF. The proposed assault called for 2 RAF Hercules aircraft to fly at extremely low altitude across the South Atlantic, avoiding Argentine radar, but for brief periods of aerial refueling with the RAF's Victor tankers, also based at Ascension. The huge distances involved meant air-to-air refueling was essential, a capability that had been lost to the RAF's Hercules. Similarly to the Vulcans used in the Black Buck raid, the aircraft would need to be hastily readapted and the crews refamiliarized in the techniques. SAS B Squadron's Ian Chalky White spoke of the challenges for refueling would present to the Hercules crews. You refuel it with only the aircraft that we had, these huge great planes that they used to refuel the Vulcan bombers with. And they are jets, obviously, and we're in a turboprop. So you get to the point where the Hercules can't go fast enough, and the jet can't go slow enough. According to Chalky, the jet would have to fly in front of the Hercules and then go into a shallow dive, allowing for the Hercules to get the speed up to connect. During this point, the refueling then takes place. Upon reaching Argentina, the aircraft would land directly on the runway at Rio Grande. Around 55 SAS soldiers would rapidly disembark and split into assault groups targeting aircraft shelters, missile storage areas, fuel installations, and support buildings. Explosives, anti-tank weapons, and small arms would be used to destroy as much equipment as possible before Argentine forces could organize an effective response. The SAS could certainly expect a significant response. The Argentine Navy had begun deploying parts of its 1st Marine Infantry Brigade to the area in late April, anticipating the possibility of a helicopter raid. By mid-May, 2 Marine battalions equipped with armoured vehicles and anti-tank weapons were stationed at the base, with total personnel numbering around 1,200. After completing the raid, the plan became far more uncertain. Some proposals suggested the Hercules would simply take off again with the assault force. Others assumed the aircraft might be damaged or destroyed, requiring the SAS to escape overland into neighbouring Chile. This would involve crossing remote terrain in harsh winter conditions while being pursued by Argentine security forces. Even amongst those involved in the planning, extraction was widely recognised as the weakest part of what was already a dubious mission. Exacerbating the challenges facing the mission was the lack of accurate intelligence available to military planners. Reliable information about Rio Grande was limited, as was a theme of the whole Falklands campaign. Satellite imagery was not as readily available as it is today, and Britain relied heavily on aerial reconnaissance, intercepted communications, and information from intelligence agencies. There were significant uncertainties regarding the exact location of aircraft, missile storage, air defense systems, and troop numbers. The risk of the Hercules landing in the wrong location or onto a runway blocked by obstacles could not be ignored. The planners therefore decided that better intelligence was essential before committing the full assault. This led to a separate reconnaissance mission. The reconnaissance operation became known as Operation Plum Duff. Its purpose was to deploy a small SAS patrol into the Rio Grande area to observe the airbase directly. The patrol would identify aircraft positions, defensive measures, guard routines, and potential landing zones for the larger assault force. The mission would require a Royal Navy Sea King helicopter taking off from HMS Invincible with 3 crew and 8 SAS troops. The mission would take the Sea King right to the edge of its operational range, making it a one-way trip. After deploying the SAS to march to an observation post, the crew would fly on to Chile and attempt to sink the aircraft in deep water. The helicopter departed from the aircraft carrier Invincible just after midnight on the 18th of May, aiming to drop an SAS team about 10 miles northwest of Rio Grande airfield. Very quickly, they ran into problems, passing close to an Argentine offshore rig and forcing a 20-minute detour to add further jeopardy to the fuel situation. As they reached the Argentinian coast, fog brought visibility into less than a mile, raising further doubts over their mission. The crew pressed on, knowing that returning to the carrier would present an unacceptable risk to the task force, potentially revealing its location. Visibility continued to reduce further, until the crew knew they'd be forced to land. Nobody could agree on their actual location, and the SAS commander was convinced they had been seen by an Argentine patrol. Unbeknownst to the team, the Argentinians had in fact tracked the aircraft through the night. The destroyer, ARA Bouchard, had picked up the Sea King on its radar and messaged through to both its sister ship and the known high-value target of Rio Grande itself. The aircraft would return to the air shortly, flying through the conditions to reach Chile. The SAS team was dropped off on the south coast of Bahia Inutil, where they would attempt to move their observation post on foot. However, after several days in Argentina, facing the Patagonian winter, they moved to an RV inside Chile, aborting their mission. The Sea King crew continued west towards Punta Arenas and the coastline of the Straits of Magellan. One of the 2 pilots, a new air crewman, disembarked on the beach and cut holes into the airframe to allow it to sink once it was ditched. The remaining pilot then flew it out over the water, but the aircraft refused to sink. Bringing the Sea King back to the beach, the crew then set upon it with explosive charges, leaving it a burnt-out hulk. The aircraft would be discovered in the coming days, as well as the aircrew, who had moved away to an RV to attempt to contact the British Embassy. Both the aircraft crew and the SAS troops would return to Britain. With the failure of Operation Plum Duff, confidence in Operation Mikado rapidly declined. The questions surrounding the Hercules' ability to even get on the ground, let alone get out again, remained. Argentine firepower at the base was steadily coming into light, and the difficulty the SAS team had experienced in attempting to move to the Plum Duff OP brought about serious concern whether any SAS team would be able to make it on foot to Chile, whilst heavily outnumbered and with enemy air power at hand. There were also the wider political considerations we touched on earlier. Unlike operations conducted around the Falkland Islands, attacking mainland Argentina represented a major escalation of the conflict. Questions were already raised in the wake of a British helicopter being discovered in Chile, not only heightening diplomatic tensions, but raising Argentine alertness on their home turf. Finally, there was the reality of a waning Exocet threat. The Argentines had burnt through their stockpile in the earlier attacks on the task force, and diplomatic pressure at home had cut off any chance of resupply. Talk amongst the personnel that would be expected to carry out any operation was that Argentina appeared to only have a single Exocet remaining, the risk and reward making no sense at all. Operation Mikado was eventually abandoned to the relief of all involved. Argentina would use its last air-launched Exocet missile against the carrier HMS Invincible on the 30th of May. It did not cause any damage to the carrier after failing to find a target. Throughout the remainder of the conflict, the Argentinian Air Force remained a threat, with conventional bombing resulting in the sinking of the Type 21 frigates Ardent and Antelope, as well as the destruction of Sir Galahad in the British landings. In spite of this threat, no further ground force raids were considered against the Argentine mainland, better judgment winning out.